Today I'll be going over my top 25 all-time favorite movies on physical media. So let's rock. Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome back. I'm Fuzz. So I originally had a totally different video planned for today, but after seeing the results of a poll I posted on my community tab the other day, I decided to change course. In that poll, I presented 4 different topics that I'm currently working on for future video releases, and I asked viewers to choose the video idea that they were most interested in. Well, it turns out the video I was originally planning on doing today came in last place in that poll. So I thought it'd be kind of a dick move to ask your opinion on these topics, but then turn around and prioritize the video that got the least number of votes. I just figured that wasn't going to be a very good look. Now, I should note that all of the topics in that poll actually received a fairly healthy amount of support, and I was really happy to see that, and I will still be doing those other videos as well. But there was still a very clear winner, so I'm here to tell you, you guys spoke, I heard you, I aim to please. So what I've got for you today is a list of my top 25 favorite movies of all time, period, right? Across all genres, all decades. These are my absolute favorites, right? My ultimate movies. Now, usually my list videos are much more specific, right? Usually I'm focusing on a specific genre or a subgenre or a decade or an actor or any combination of those things. But for this particular video, I thought it would be fun to sit down and actually try to figure out what my favorite movies of all time are, and rank them as well. Believe it or not, I've never really done that. And this list actually ended up being a little trickier than I thought it was going to be. I thought it'd be fairly easy to do at first, but no, it ended up being quite a bit trickier than I was anticipating, because I had to decide which films helped shape my love of movies the most. I mean, I pretty much knew what my top 10 was going to look like, right? I mean, I've had those titles floating around in my head for some time now, but I hadn't really given a whole lot of thought to what slots 11 through 25 might look like, nor what order I would rank these titles in. Even trying to rank these titles was kind of tricky, so the whole thing just ended up being a little tougher than I expected. That said, if you happen to be a regular viewer of the channel, I do want to give you a bit of a courtesy heads up that you're probably not going to be all that surprised by many of the titles I've chosen for this list. After all, I've often talked about many of my favorite movies in the various list videos that I've done, right? Top 10 lists, so you're naturally going to get many of my favorites. And you guys have probably noticed the many times that I've said something like, oh, this is one of my all-time favorite films, or here's another one of my all-time favorite films. I do that quite a bit with my list videos, right? I frequently reference certain titles that are my all-time favorites. But I've never sat down and given you guys a definitive list of my absolute favorite movies across all genres and eras. So just think of this as an opportunity for you guys to get to know me a little better. Okay, so let's just dig right in here. Coming in at number 25 is The Natural on 4K. I have always been a big fan of this film. I used to watch it all the time when I was younger. Just love this film. In fact, I actually saw this movie in the theater when it first came out with my parents back in I think 1984. And it was just a great film. At the time, I remember being taken by the almost like superhuman powers that this baseball player had. And the funny thing is, I'm not even a big sports guy. I don't really like sports, but the one sport I do like is baseball. And, I don't watch a lot of sports movies, but this one movie really resonated with me for some reason. I just really enjoyed this when I was young, and just watched it many, many times over the years. And this is also the first 4K release I ever bought. This is actually the movie that kind of brought me back into the fold with collecting. So my very first 4K. It's a great looking 4K, and you get both the theatrical cut and the director's cut here. There's only about a 5-minute difference in the runtime, but the director's cut is really interesting. I still prefer the theatrical cut here, but the director's cut has some interesting changes to it. They do things a little bit differently, especially in the first part of the film. And it's definitely worth watching, and you do get both the theatrical cut and the director's cut on 4K. Both versions are on 4K, so I really appreciate that. And sometimes, you know how it is, sometimes they put the director's cut on a Blu-ray only, but they didn't do that here. You get both the both cuts on 4K here. So yeah, just a film I absolutely love, The Natural on 4K. Next up for number 24, we have The Rock, a movie that I think is a perfect action film. Such an awesome movie, and boy, do we ever need this bad boy on 4K, don't we? And I've talked about this before on the channel, you know, so it should be no surprise to anyone that I'm a big fan of this film. Of course, amazing cast. You got Nicolas Cage here, you got Sean Connery, you got Ed Harris, who is always amazing. And he does a great job in this particular role. And of course, you've got some other great people in this film as well. Michael Biehn, David Morse is in this, John Spencer, Tony Todd is in this film. He does a great job with the role he's given. So yeah, just an awesome film all the way around. Like I said, I consider it a perfect action film. I won't say too much about it because I have talked about this one, I think, a number of times on the channel before, but it's definitely an all-time favorite for me. So yeah, The Rock at number 24. For number 23, I've got my favorite Steven Spielberg film, and I'm talking about Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You know, I'll be honest, I'm not even the biggest Spielberg fan. I mean, there's certain films I like, but there's a lot of stuff he's put out that I don't really care about that much. But his early work, I loved his early work, Jaws, Close Encounters, Duel, even E.T., but this is my absolute favorite of all the Spielberg movies, and I usually watch it every year, probably around Christmas time or maybe sometime in January. For some reason, that time of year, it always feels like a good time to pop this one in for me. I don't know why exactly, but absolutely love this film. Of course, you got Richard Dreyfuss doing an amazing job with this film. He definitely loses his marbles, but you gotta love him, right? And Terry Garr, of course, who I wasn't a big fan of her character in this film. I mean, I like Terry Garr, but I wasn't a big fan of her character in this particular movie. Now, this 4K I got in a special collector's edition here. In fact, it's right behind me on the shelf here. Let me grab it, and it's going to probably mess up the brightness of this here because I've got some weird auto brightness setting on my phone when I'm recording these, and I haven't figured out how to have it not do that. But let's see what happens here. Grab this bad boy over here. All right, so I have shown this off before. Whoops, I'm losing stuff here. Excuse me. I have shown this off before, and I really like this edition. You can still get it. You can get it from Amazon. It's like 40 bucks, right? But here, check this out. Now, hopefully my mic picked up the music on that. We'll find out when I go to edit this. But yeah, I just love that. How cool is that? Here, I'll press the button again for you. Get a close-up there. How cool is that? Very cool. And then this lifts up like this. And then this slip-covered edition was inside here. This was actually a double dip for me, so I had an extra copy. So I've just got that inside, filling up the space. And then you get a nice little glossy book there. But just such a cool set. I was such a big fan of this movie that I had to double dip and get the 4K anniversary edition box set. But yeah, great film all the way around. I love Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Okay, moving on to number 22, we have another prison film. In fact, the same prison as The Rock. We're talking about Escape from Alcatraz, 1977, Clint Eastwood. Yeah, this is awesome. I have always been a huge fan of this film. Going back to my childhood, I used to watch this movie all the time, and it seemed like it was always playing on TV or cable TV or whatever, and I used to watch it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. I don't know, probably 30, 40 times in my life. I feel like I used to watch it quite a bit whenever it was on, and I've never gotten tired of it. And I was really happy to see Kino Lorber put this out on 4K. It was a big one for me. I was super excited to receive this. Just one of the best prison films of all time, in my view. It's probably my favorite prison film of all time, although it's close, right? But yeah, it's probably my favorite prison movie. I've always been fascinated by the story of Frank Morris and his escape from Alcatraz. Of course, this is based on a true story. The only people that ever escaped, or at least that we know of, we don't really know what happened to them, but it was a mystery that was never really solved. So a lot of people presume that they made it and that they actually were able to escape. So this tells that story. If you've never seen this old Clint Eastwood film, I highly recommend it. It's a great one, especially if you're a fan of prison films. This is a classic. So yeah, for my number 22, Escape from Alcatraz. Coming in at number 21, we have a music movie, right? And I'm talking about Almost Famous from the year 2000. I love this movie. I fell in love with it the first time I saw it, and it almost immediately became an all-time favorite movie for me. That's how much of a connection I feel to this movie. Such a great film. What I love about the 4K here is they actually did us right by this release. They gave us both the theatrical cut and the bootleg cut, both on 4K. All right. Now, for those who don't know, the bootleg cut is basically the director's cut. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the only way to go with this film. I never watch the theatrical version anymore. The bootleg cut is almost 40 minutes longer, so you get a lot of extra footage, a lot of extra stuff in there that you definitely do not see in the theatrical cut. And it really helps with the character development in a big way. In a big way. There's a lot of cool stuff that we get in this bootleg cut. So it's a story of essentially a young teen aspiring music journalist, right, who ends up following this band around on tour, and I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot more to it than just that, but that's the essence of it. So many quotable moments from this movie for me personally. It's also one of my wife's favorite movies as well. We both love this movie. Pretty good cast too. This was Kate Hudson's first movie, I think, ever. It was her debut in feature films. But you also got Billy Crudup in here. Is that how I pronounce his name? Is it Crudup? Is that how you pronounce it? And then Jason Lee's in this, and some other good people as well. But you know, one thing Cameron Crowe has always been really good at is characters. You know, his characters are amazing. The characters he writes. His characters are always so memorable and often have little quirks to them that you can't help but find really endearing. So, I mean, that's Cameron Crowe. That's kind of his jam, right? That's what he does. He's all about the story and the characters, and you know, nobody writes them like Cameron Crowe does. When we're talking about slice of life movies, this is a slice of life music movie, right? And nobody writes slice of life movies quite like Cameron Crowe. So yeah, definitely an all-time favorite for me, and one that was absolutely a must-own for my collection. I was really excited when I saw them putting this out on 4K. So, yep, Almost Famous at number 21. Next up for number 20, I'm not going to say too much about this one because I bring it up a lot on the channel, but of course you knew there had to be some Tony Scott in there. If you're a regular viewer, you know I'm a big Tony Scott fan, so True Romance, just amazing film. Love this film. Got the nice little Arrow deluxe box set there with the steelbook inside. But yeah, amazing Arrow transfer here. Arrow did a great job with this release. Amazing cast in this film, right? I mean, the cast is unbelievable. You know, you get, of course, Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette, but you get Christopher Walken in there. You got Dennis Hopper in there. You got Gary Oldman in there as Drexel, who one of my favorite characters in this movie is Drexel. Drexel was awesome. I love Drexel. In fact, I even wrote a song called Drexel once, inspired by his characters. So, yeah, I've always loved this movie. You just can't go wrong with something like this. And of course, some other good people in here too, like Val Kilmer makes a brief appearance. It's, you know, you have to watch very closely. And of course, Brad Pitt is in here playing like the ultimate stoner, right? So just an amazing cast. James Gandolfini as well. So Yeah, such an awesome film. And this is a great looking 4K disc. So yeah, True Romance from Arrow for my number 20. Okay, and coming in at number 19, we've got Point Break, another absolute classic. This is from 1991. Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze, Gary Busey. Yeah, just a classic, a great, kind of action heist film. I mean, there's definitely a strong heist element, but there's other stuff too. Of course, surfing is involved. Just an awesome film. That I never get really tired of rewatching. It's got a high rewatch value for me. I think most of these have a pretty high rewatch value for me, as you would expect for, an all-time favorite movie list, right? But I don't know how much I can really say about this. I've talked about this on the channel before. It's a great looking 4K, probably the best this film has ever looked. Certainly since its theatrical exhibition. And I was just really excited when they released this on 4K last year. It was one that I felt we definitely needed to have on the format. And at the time, I wasn't sure if it was going to happen in the near future, and then it did, right? So, and this is a Shout Factory release, by the way. They also have this available in a steelbook, assuming they're not sold out at this point, but you can get a steelbook for this as well. But I was fine with just the slipcover. So yeah, Point Break, just an awesome film and looks great on 4K. If you don't have this in your collection and you're a big fan of this film, I would highly recommend picking this up. For me, it was definitely a must own. Okay, and moving on to number 18, we have one of my favorite heist films of all time, and that is The Score with Robert De Niro, Edward Norton. When did this come out? 2001. I saw this in the theater when it first came out and loved it. Loved this film. I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest Robert De Niro fan. I mean, there's like, I don't know, half a dozen films that I like that he did. But I don't really like De Niro. I mean, just in general. But I love this film. And this period of time, there was a few years there in the late 90s, early 2000s, where he was just putting out banger after banger, right? And so, yeah, this is a great movie. Of course, I am a big Edward Norton fan, and this is one of my favorite Edward Norton movies as well. He's awesome in this. And you have the great Marlon Brando in this movie as well. Another Kino Lorber 4K here, and the 4K looks excellent, as you would expect from Kino Lorber. They're very consistent on their quality of their 4K releases. So yeah, just such a great film. I love the score and a high rewatchability factor here for me as well. This is one of those ones I never seem to get tired of watching, no matter how many times I see it. So yeah, love the score for my number 18. Moving on to number 17, we've got an awesome action film, Speed. I love this movie, and I think it's kind of become a bit of a classic. Amazing cast here, Keanu Reeves, Sandra Bullock, and the great Dennis Hopper in what I think is one of the best villain roles, or one of my favorite villain roles ever. I just love Dennis Hopper in this film. He's both a menace, but he's also kind of amusing at times. And yeah, you can't go wrong with something like this. I saw this in the theater in 1994 when it first came out. Absolutely loved it. Fell in love with Sandra Bullock like we all did back then. So yeah, just an action-packed thrill ride that you can't go wrong with. Speed at my number 17. And coming in next at number 16, we've got Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman. Not talking about Sea of Love here. I have this double feature pack, Blu-ray, but of course I'm just referring to Scent of a Woman here. Love this film. Absolutely love this film. I've often said Denzel Washington is my favorite actor, but another favorite actor of mine has always been Al Pacino, and his the final kind of monologue that he does at the end of this film is just incredible. I mean, it is so compelling, the stuff that he says when he's kind of going off there at the end. I just love it, and this is another one of those movies I can watch over and over again, immediately connected with this movie the first time I saw it. It really kind of made an impact on me for some reason. So I have always loved this. Of course, Al Pacino won the Oscar, Best Actor Oscar, for his performance in this movie, and I think it was well deserved. You got some other solid people in this film as well. Chris O'Donnell does a great job with the role. It's appropriate for, you know, his performance, I think. You also get an early performance from the late, great Philip Seymour Hoffman in this. You know, he does a great job with the role he's given as well. So yeah, this is a great film. If you've never seen it, I would highly recommend it. It's one you definitely should check out. It's also got a pretty high rewatch value for me. So yeah, Scent of a Woman at number 16 for me. By the way, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, do me a favor and please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you do, don't forget to hit that notification bell as well so you can always be alerted when I'm posting new videos that you might be interested in. Also, don't forget to like the video. It really does help with the channel's visibility out there on YouTube. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Okay, and moving on to number 15, we have another Tony Scott film here. I'm talking about Man on Fire. Absolutely love this movie. I won't say too much about this one because I have talked about it quite a bit, but awesome cast: Denzel Washington, Dakota Fanning. You got Christopher Walken in this. You got Mickey Rourke in this. Yeah, just a great action thriller all the way around. And Denzel Washington, total badass in this movie. Just love it. So yeah, Man on Fire for my number 15. If you've never seen it, you should definitely check this out. I mean, absolutely, like, go get it right away because it's really that good. So yeah, Man on Fire. Next up for number 14, we've got another high rewatch value film for me. The great John Carpenter. I'm talking about Escape from New York on 4K. Yeah, it's just an awesome film. In fact, I was watching this, rewatching this last night. I was just in the mood. And this is one of those films I can rewatch a lot. I don't ever seem to really get tired of this one either, right? So, but look at that art too. I love that art. Isn't that cool? This is the Scream Factory 4K release. It looks great. I personally prefer the Scream Factory 4K releases of all the John Carpenter films over the Studio Canal releases. And that's mainly because these 4Ks are done on triple layer BD100 discs, basically more storage capacity, so you get a higher quality encode, and you can see the difference. And you also get Dolby Atmos mixes in the Scream Factory John Carpenter movies, right? So, and I don't believe Studio Canal had Dolby Atmos. So yeah, definitely recommend the Scream Factory 4K releases of all the John Carpenter films. But such a great cast in this film. You've of course got Kurt Russell as the iconic Snake Plissken. You got Ernest Borgnine in this. You got Donald Pleasance, Tom Atkins, a bunch of other people too. Adrienne Barbeau, Isaac Hayes. So yeah, just great film all the way around, and one that I never seem to get tired of. If you don't already own this on 4K, yeah, I'd recommend picking it up and adding it to your collection, especially if you're a big John Carpenter fan. There's no excuse not to own this one on 4K, at least from my POV. Okay, coming in at number 13 now. It's the first entry where I'm kind of cheating a little bit. I'm actually talking about 3 films because they really all need to go together in my mind. I'm talking about Star Wars, right? The original trilogy, New Hope, of course, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, of course, right? All 3 of these, yeah, these are definitely all-time favorites for me. Let me get this in a different order here so they look a little bit, there we go. Get New Hope first, right? I saw all of these in the theater when they first came out, and they were pretty instrumental films for, in terms of like my appreciation of movies, in terms of falling in love with movies. These were among the movies that really made me a movie fan, right? These films were groundbreaking at the time. We had never seen anything like that. I think I was probably 6 or 7 years old when I saw the first Star Wars in the theater, and I can still have, like, they're faint memories, but I can still remember to this day the feeling that I had, just the wow factor. I was just completely in awe over the special effects. I'd never seen anything like that at the time. And of course, was just as excited about these sequels when they came out at that age. When Empire came out, that was a pretty big wow thing for me as well. Especially the big twist that none of us saw coming at the time, or at least I felt like none of us saw it coming at the time. I was certainly surprised to find out who Vader was. So yeah, great stuff. Of course, Jedi's not nearly as good as these first two, but I gotta include it in here because when I'm watching these, I don't just watch the first two and then stop, right? I watch all three of the original trilogy when I can. Now, a quick note about the 4K. The 4Ks on these they're okay. They're not bad. They're certainly watchable, but I admit that you do notice on 4K, you notice more of George's tweaking, right? The CGI additions that he put in the film, yeah, they kind of stick out like a sore thumb on 4K. They're more noticeable because they were rendered at a lower resolution, right? So you definitely notice them more, and it just looks more animated. It kind of sticks out away from all the practical stuff in these films. The CGI, it just doesn't seem like it fits very well. And so that's the only downside. I would love to get my hands on these despecialized 4Ks or whatever, some of the fan-made 4Ks that are floating around out there. That's something I'm thinking about investigating and seeing if I can get my hands on at some point. But for now, these will have to do. Yeah, pivotal movies for me when I was a kid here. The Star Wars original trilogy. You just can't go wrong with this. Okay, next up for number 12, we have a little Stallone action here from 1982, the classic First Blood. This is the one that started it all for Rambo. Awesome, awesome film. This is one I wish I had seen in the theaters when I was a kid, but I was a little too young for my parents to take me to see something like this at the time. I was right on the verge there because by the time the second movie came out, I went and saw that in the theater with my dad, and I loved it, But I don't think any of the sequels come anywhere close to being as good as this first movie. Just a totally different tone all the way around, The sequels are more like, straight up action films. They're a little bit more balls to the wall, whereas this is something else entirely. I had always kind of wished with the sequels that they would spend more time on U.S. soil. Right, like more situations where Rambo is dealing with civilian life, like he was in this first film. But that most of the sequels are not like that. So it makes it hard for me to think of any of the sequels as being anywhere near as good as this first film. However, they're decent. I like them all, but not nearly as much as this. So. Great film. Brian Dennehy as the asshole cop. You just love to hate him. Of course, you got Richard Crenna as Troutman. Classic stuff. Absolutely love this film. And the epic rant that Stallone does at the end of the film is just the stuff of legend as far as I'm concerned. And it's the kind of thing that shows that Stallone really can act. He's always been a pretty decent actor. It's not all just like balls to the wall action films. Like this guy can actually act. And I think that is very evident in this film. So great stuff. Of course, this has, like so many of the films on this list, if not all of them, big time rewatch value. Another one I never get sick of watching, no matter how many times I see it. And I've seen it quite a few times in my life. So always loved this film since the 80s. And yeah, First Blood. You just can't go wrong with something like this, can you? And the 4K looks great too. Really good looking 4K, especially all that outdoor location shooting. Yeah, really shines in 4K. So yeah, First Blood for my number 12. For number 11, we've got Die Hard. And really, it's not just Die Hard. It's really the first three Die Hard movies for me. Of course, it's the first film that's really the big classic here. But I have always loved all three of the first films. You know, whenever I watch this, it's usually around Christmas time, sometime in December. I will usually watch this almost every year. And when I do watch it, when I'm finished, I go right into Die Hard 2. I just feel like, you know, because Die Hard 2 is set at Christmas as well. And it's just a nice continuous experience, right? So I always watch 1 and 2 together when I watch them, or, you know, really relatively close together, right? Maybe a night apart or something. But we also got to talk about Die Hard with a Vengeance, right? I have the sequels in this little pack here. We got to talk about Die Hard with a Vengeance as well, because I think I like that one almost as much as the original film. I mean, With a Vengeance is awesome. You can't go wrong. Jeremy Irons as the bad guy. I mean, he did a great job. And yeah, it's got a lot of rewatch value for me, both this one and With a Vengeance. So yeah, I don't know what else I can really say about these movies. We all know what Die Hard is, right? I'm curious to know if any of you feel the same way as I do about With a Vengeance, that, you know, feeling it's, you know, almost as good as the first film. And that makes sense too, because With a Vengeance is the only sequel that was directed by John McTiernan, the original director of the original classic, right? So yeah, and it makes sense. Those are my two favorite Die Hard films. So yeah, just awesome stuff with the Die Hard series. I even like the fourth Die Hard. I thought that one was pretty entertaining as well. It's not as good as the other three, the first three, I should say, but I do like it. The only one I don't like is Die Hard 5. I don't even bother with that one. But yeah, the original Die Hard was a pretty groundbreaking film, I think, at the time. It kind of set a new standard for the action movie genre. It's kind of almost laid out a new template, if you will. And a lot of people would follow that template in the years after the release of this film. So yeah, just classic stuff all the way around. So I'm putting Die Hard 1 through 3 as my number 11 entry. Okay, next up, we are moving into the mighty top 10. Now, just a reminder to, if you're a regular viewer, I'm guessing none of these are going to be a surprise to you. They're all films I've talked about quite a bit on the channel before, so just bear with me. I am going to try and breeze through these a little bit quicker than maybe the previous releases. We'll see how that goes. You know, I always say that and then I end up rambling, so, you know, who knows what'll happen. But for my number 10, we have The Fifth Element. And I've mentioned this particular 4K release a number of times on the channel. I am always urging people to buy this particular version on 4K, not the US Sony release. This is a Studio Canal release. It's a UK import. You can still buy this on Amazon US. If you're in the US, it just ships through Amazon Global. It might take a little bit longer to get to you, but this is the version you want. It looks way better than the US Sony release. The restoration just looks a lot better. The treatment they gave this film looks way better. This I consider a reference quality disc. I can't say the same thing about the US Sony release, so there is that big of a difference. And if you talk to anybody who's seen both this version and the US version, they will tell you this one blows away the US Sony release. So definitely recommend it. Of course, Bruce Willis here. You got Gary Oldman in this. You've got Ian Holm, Ash from Alien. Love Ian Holm in this. And of course, Mila Jovovich, who, I mean, this was the first movie I ever heard of her. This is the movie that exposed me to who she was. And yeah, so she was awesome in this. I still think it's her best role. You know, yeah, Resident Evil's fine, but this is the movie where I think she really made her mark. If by some chance you've never seen The Fifth Element, this is just such a great sci-fi film. It's a little bit off the wall, a little bit quirky, but it's so much fun. And you just can't go wrong with something like this. So yeah, at number 10, The Fifth Element. Okay, next up for number 9, another reference quality disc that I've talked about a lot on the channel, and I'm talking about The Thing. John Carpenter, the best John Carpenter film, I think. And this is just amazing. It set the standard for practical effects with Rob Bottin and all the great work that he did. And this 4K is incredible. It's a must own if you are a fan of this film. You got to get this 4K because it just looks amazing. So, yeah, I'm not going to say too much about this one because I have talked about it a lot, but absolutely love The Thing. So, The Thing for my number 9. Moving on to number 8, we have The Abyss. Absolutely love The Abyss. Of course, I made a big James Cameron video where I talked about all the James Cameron 4K releases, or some of them, right? The most recent round of releases that we got back in March, I think. Absolutely love this. This was the best of the bunch. The 4K restoration on this is incredible. It is sourced from a 4K scan of the original camera negative. It is not an upscale, and it is by far the best I have ever seen this film look. Of course, I still haven't tried the blow dryer trick to try and get this sticker off. I guess I should probably think about doing that if I don't want it to be permanently on there forever. But at some point I may do that. It's not that big of a deal. Honestly, I can live with it. But such an amazing film, one of the best Ed Harris roles ever, and you know, groundbreaking stuff in this film. The special effects kind of planted the seed. Some of the visual effects planted the seed for Terminator 2 few years later, and yeah, I just absolutely love this film. High rewatch value. So glad we finally got it on 4K, right? I'm glad we finally got it on at least Blu-ray or better. It had been a long time in the making. We waited many years to get this film in HD or better, and I'm glad it finally arrived. And it did not disappoint. This restoration is just absolutely stunning, and it's easily the best this film has ever looked. So yeah, The Abyss at number 8. Moving on to number 7, we have Total Recall. A little steelbook here, and I love these. Lionsgate? Yeah, Lionsgate steelbooks. I know Paramount does this sometimes with a few of their steelbooks as well, but this is kind of Lionsgate thing where you got this kind of printed plastic cover that is over the steelbook there. And check out that steelbook. Is that beautiful artwork or what? Love it. There's not a whole lot on the back there, just Mars. But I just love the artwork on this. And so yeah, you got the little printed color slipcover there, plastic slipcover. I absolutely love it when there are steelbooks that have plastic printed slipcovers because it helps protect the steelbook as well, right? So love Lionsgate steelbooks. And yeah, this is just another classic with a high rewatch value. I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys how awesome this one actually is, right? This is directed by the great Paul Verhoeven. Absolutely love his sci-fi films in particular, right? He does great work. And the 4K looks really good as well. 4K looks really good on this. It still retains a nice, warm, filmic look. And you know, some of the visual effects are maybe starting to show their age a little bit, but I still think they hold up fairly well, all things considered. It's just a great looking 4K that I would definitely recommend picking up on 4K if you're a fan of the film and you haven't done so yet. Okay, and moving on to number 6, this is another one of those entries where I'm actually including multiple films in a single entry, only because it's The Matrix, right? Of course, that first film is the big one that we all love. And some people just weren't able to make it beyond the first film, right? They didn't like anything that came out after the first film. I actually like the entire quadrilogy, including Matrix Resurrections. You know, I thought all of them were pretty decent films. Of course, none of the sequels are going to be anywhere near as good as the original film, right? But I still enjoy them. I think they're all kind of a fun ride. And I just love the world building in these films. And, you know, funny thing about these films, of course, I was way into The Matrix when it first came out in 1999. Loved it, absolutely loved it. But I remember at the time when the sequels were first released in this original trilogy, I didn't really get into the sequels nearly as much as the original film at the time. It actually took me some time away from these films to be able to appreciate the sequels more. I think it was like 15 years later, after I had originally seen them all. I hadn't watched any of them for a while. And about like 15 years later, I went back and revisited the whole original trilogy, of course, before Resurrections came out. And I totally got a lot more out of the trilogy after, coming back to it 15 years later than I did at the time when I first watched it. So I think there's a lot of layers and a lot of depth to this franchise that I don't know if everybody necessarily appreciates. At least not to the degree that I do. So I love the whole story. I would never just like cut it off at the first film, because then I'd feel like I was only watching 25% of the whole story, right? Or at least a third of the story if you don't even bother with Resurrections. But I like them all. I think they're all fun. I think this one got a bad rap. I think it's better than people gave it credit for. It's still like, as far as like if I were to rank these in orders, 1 and 2 are my favorites, and this would probably rank third, with Revolutions being the last one, right? But I still really enjoy them all. And I've also said before, Matrix, this is absolutely reference quality on 4K. You cannot go wrong with these on 4K. They just look amazing. They look stunning. There's a lot of really cool practical set pieces, practical sets, and other types of things that just shine in 4K. So much depth, so much pop to the image. It's pretty stunning looking stuff. And of course, amazing cast, right? Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus, Hugo Weaving. You just can't go wrong with a cast like that. So if you don't have these on 4K, I would definitely recommend picking them up at some point if you are a fan of these films. Okay, and now we're getting into my top 5. And the funny thing about this is my top 5 I've actually had kind of swirling around in my head for about 2 years now. I've actually had it in my mind what my top 5 films of all time, favorite films of all time were, and even what order I had them in. So this part I've had in my mind for a while. For number 5, the greatest cops and robbers heist flick of all time. I'm talking about Heat. You just can't go wrong with Heat. And I know I say that all the time, but who cares? I love it. Heat is awesome. Heat is amazing. Epic tale. Heist film, cops and robbers. I mean, some people think it's more cops and robbers than heist film, and I get that. I totally understand that, but I always think of this as one of the greatest heist films ever. Right up there with the score for me, like I mentioned earlier. This film and the score are my 2 favorite heist films. And I actually saw Heat in the theater when it was first released, went and saw it, absolutely loved it. Like I said, I was on a big Al Pacino kick. I'm a big fan of Al Pacino. And at the time, I was like, not new to discovering Al Pacino, but I was like really on a big kick at the time when I, found out this new Cops and Robbers heist movie was opening in theaters, and it had Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. Again, I think this is De Niro's best role. Like I said, I'm not a fan of Robert De Niro much, mainly because I just think the guy's an idiot. But, set that aside. He did some great films, right? He's a good actor. I will give him that. And I do think this is De Niro's best role. That classic scene where Pacino and De Niro are meeting in the coffee shop, that became, I had no idea when I was watching it at the time in the theater that scene was going to go on to become this iconic, classic scene in film history. So it's funny how that works out, right? But such an amazing scene. Incredible stuff. So got the Steelbook here for Heat. This is on 4K. A lot of people didn't like the 4K. They thought it was too dark. I think the 4K is fine, but it is a little bit darker. But it still looks great on 4K. So Heat on 4K for my number 5. For number 4, we've got Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Really looking forward to James Cameron and Lightstorm redoing this 4K because, as many of you know, this 4K transfer is considered one of the worst 4Ks on the market. I bought this mainly because I really liked the steelbook design. It was actually a double dip on 4K. I originally bought just the standard Amaray case edition, and then I saw this, I think it was at Best Buy for, I don't know how much. It was cheap. It was like 15 bucks. And I was like, well, you know, for a nice looking steelbook like that, yeah, I got to do it. And so I bought this particular edition purely for the packaging. And again, one of those printed colored slipcovers. Look at that steelbook. How cool is that? And there's the back for you. How cool is that, huh? One of the coolest steelbooks out there, I think. Or, you know, there's a lot of cool steelbooks out there, but I always thought this one was pretty cool. But yeah, number 4 is Terminator 2. Saw this in the theater when it first came out, and I was so excited. It was a huge moment for me when this came out, when this sequel was released, and getting to see this in the theater. It was so exciting, and I was just blown away by it when I first watched it. So much fun, and yeah, I mean, it's Terminator 2. You know, you just can't go wrong with it. So that's my number 4. For my number 3, we got Alien, right? Alien, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. And I do still think to this day it is the best Ridley Scott film, which is saying something because he's done a lot of stuff and a lot of different types of films. But I still think this is his best work ever. Absolutely love this film. This one I can watch so many times. I never get sick of it. This I consider a comfort movie. Like when I'm in the mood for something that I'm just super familiar with, that I feel like I know like the back of my hand, this often gets put in. Yeah, very much a comfort movie for me. I like the vibe and atmosphere, right? I like how that first hour is kind of slow. I love that. It's kind of a slow burn, and then it starts to get a little exciting, doesn't it? So, yeah, just a great classic film, and one of the best horror films of all time, right? So, yeah, Alien at my number 3. And of course, we're into the top 2 now. So I'm sure you guys could guess what the final 2 are. Especially, I mean, if you've been watching the channel for a while, I'm sure you guys could guess. Number 2 is Terminator, the original Terminator. Another one I think they're working on a 4K release for, along with redoing the 4K for Terminator 2. I've heard they are working on that this year. I cannot wait for this bad boy to be released on 4K. That's going to be awesome. And yeah, you can't go wrong with the Terminator. Saw it in the theater with my dad. I told this story before, but saw it in the theater with my dad in 1984. It was my first rated R movie that I saw with my dad, like that was parent approved, right? It was the first rated R movie I ever saw in the theater. And boy, did it make an impact. I mean, I think I could probably make the case that this film is one of the reasons I am so into movies to begin with. This is where my love of movies, I think, really began, was seeing this little gem in the theater with my dad in 1984. It was a double feature. We saw the movie Runaway with Tom Selleck. You remember that? Gene Simmons? Well, this was the second movie that was showing that day, and I can remember being really excited because my dad, we never stayed for double features. You know, when my dad and I went to the movie, it'd just be usually just one movie. But that day, for some reason, my dad asked me if we wanted to stick around and watch this. And of course, I was really excited about that. It was a pretty pivotal moment in my my appreciation of film. So this film just blew me away. This film just blew me away at the time. Absolutely blew me away and made a huge, huge impact. So yeah, number 2, The Terminator. And then, of course, finally, for my number 1, I've said this many, many times. You guys know what it is. Aliens, right? Aliens, absolutely love it. And I do like the new 4K. I think the new James Cameron 4K looks stunning. I understand the criticisms. I understand, people wanting to see more grain or whatnot. But I think they did a great job with this. Now, I get it. This is... they didn't go back and do a 4K scan of the original camera negative for this particular release. They used an existing 2K scan of the original camera negative. So I understand that people had complaints with that, but honestly, when you watch it, I don't think you can tell. I mean, when you watch this, the detail on this is off the charts. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts on this, you can check out the James Cameron 4K takeaways reviews I did of these films, and I'll also link in the description down below if you guys want to check it out. But I don't know how much I can really say about Aliens right now that I haven't said before. So many classic quotable moments from this film, whether it's coming from Hicks or Hudson or Burke or you know, of course, Sigourney Weaver herself. Yeah, great stuff. And I'm really looking forward to the new documentary that's coming out from Creator VC. I think in a couple months we're going to get hard copies of that. It's like a new 4-hour plus ultimate making of or retrospective documentary on aliens, and I really can't wait to see that because I feel like you know, I'm one of the world's biggest fans of this film, so you know, I had to get the documentary. It's simply one of the greatest sci-fi action movies of all time. Okay, so that about wraps it up for my top 25 all-time favorite movies on physical media. I hope you guys enjoyed this list. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. You know, I may have to do a sequel to this video because there were a bunch of movies that I couldn't decide between. Like I said at the beginning, this list was actually fairly difficult to put together. At least, you know, the top 10 was fairly easy, but after that, it got a little trickier. And you know, I have many other all-time favorite movies as well. So I think maybe at some point I'll do a video where I cover like 26 through 50, right? So that between these two videos, you'll have like my top 50 all-time favorite films. Let me know what you think of that idea in the comments down below. If you'd like me to do a sequel to this video at some point, I'd love to hear it. You know, I always love talking to you guys and getting feedback from you guys anyway, so make sure you leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts with me. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.